Seneca was one of the wealthiest, most connected men in Rome. He advised emperors. He knew senators. He was invited everywhere. And he wrote this: "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those who you yourself can improve." Then he added, "The wrong crowd will corrupt you more reliably than any enemy." This is the man who understood Roman society better than almost anyone, and his most urgent advice was about who you choose to be around. Think about the last time you spent an afternoon with someone who exhausts you. Not someone cruel. Not someone dangerous. Just someone whose energy drains yours, whose conversations make you feel smaller, or slower, or more cynical by the end. Now think about how long you've been allowing that. The problem isn't that toxic people are attacking you. It's more subtle than that, and in some ways more dangerous. It happens slowly. One small compromise at a time. One shifted standard. One adjusted boundary. Until one day you look at how you're thinking, how you're speaking, what you're tolerating, and you don't recognize it. Seneca called this contagion. Not violence, infection. The wrong company doesn't break you all at once. It changes you in doses so small you never notice the individual steps. You don't get corrupted all at once. You get corrupted in small doses, in the presence of people who make small compromises seem reasonable. What most people don't know about Seneca is that he earned his understanding of this the hard way. Letters from a Stoic, the source of most of what we're about to discuss, wasn't written by a man who had been sitting safely in a philosophical library. It was written near the end of Seneca's life, after decades of navigating the most dangerous social environment on earth, the Roman imperial court. He had been exiled. He had been recalled. He had advised 3 emperors, 2 of whom were deeply unstable. He had been wealthy, then stripped, then wealthy again. He knew, from personal experience, exactly what the wrong company costs. The 124 letters he wrote to his friend Lucilius weren't academic exercises. They were dispatches from a man who had paid the price of ignoring his own advice, and was trying to make sure someone else didn't have to. He wrote, in letter 7, "Recede in te ipse quantum potes." Withdraw into yourself as much as you can. Rule 1, recede in te ipse. Withdraw into yourself. This sounds antisocial. It isn't. Seneca wasn't telling Lucilius to become a hermit. He himself never was one. He spent his entire life in Roman public life. What he was describing was something more precise: the practice of deliberate withdrawal as protection against the slow accumulation of other people's standards. He explained it with a specific observation. After spending time in crowds, even good crowds, even social events with no malicious intent, he noticed something. He never returned home with quite the same moral character he went out with. Something became unsettled. Some standard had been quietly adjusted. He wrote, "I never return home with quite the same moral character I went out with. Something or other becomes unsettled where I had achieved calm." This is the mechanism. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't require bad people. It only requires sustained exposure to the aggregate noise of other people's values, habits, and assumptions, without regular recalibration back to your own. The practice of withdrawal is that recalibration. Time alone not as punishment or loneliness, but as maintenance. As returning to yourself after the drift. In modern terms, if you're never alone, if every available moment is filled with social input, scrolling, background noise, you have no reference point for your own standards. You only know who you've been shaped to be by the most recent exposure. Seneca didn't say avoid people. He said schedule time to come back to yourself. Rule 2. Choose who you want to become, not who makes you comfortable. Seneca made a distinction that most people miss: the difference between a friend and a mentor. Friends give you comfort. Mentors give you direction. These are different things, and Stoics were deliberate about treating them differently. When Seneca looked at the people in his life, he wasn't asking, do I enjoy spending time with this person? He was asking, after spending time with this person, am I closer to who I want to be? He wrote, choose as a guide one whom you will admire more when you see him act than when you hear him speak. This is a harder standard than likability. It's about finding people whose behavior, not just their words, pulls you upward. People who show you what you're capable of by demonstrating it themselves. Here's the honest question Seneca would ask you. Look at the 3 people you spend the most time with. After every interaction, do you feel sharper or duller? More like yourself or less? Not whether they're kind people. Not whether you enjoyed the conversation. Whether you're closer to the version of yourself you actually want to be. This isn't about cutting everyone who isn't perfect. It's about being deliberate. About giving the most access to the people who pull you up, and less access, over time, to those who don't. Rule 3. Cut quietly, not dramatically. Here is where Stoic philosophy diverges sharply from modern advice culture. Modern advice says, set boundaries loudly. Have the conversation. Post about it. Make it clear. Seneca said, retire quietly. He wasn't describing conflict avoidance. He was describing a different kind of strategy, one that preserves your energy, creates no new enemies, and produces the same result without the drama. He wrote, retire into yourself, but first make yourself such as you would be happy to retreat into. The Stoic approach to difficult relationships is gradual, natural distance, not announcement, not confrontation. You don't burn anything down. You simply redirect your time. You become less available. You invest your attention elsewhere. This works better than confrontation for 2 reasons. First, it doesn't create the defensive reaction that explicit rejection does. Second, it doesn't cost you emotional energy, which a confrontation always does, regardless of outcome. The people Seneca spent less time with over his life, he didn't tell them why. He just found himself with other things to do. Rule 4. Protect your solitude. Seneca made a claim that sounds counterintuitive until you sit with it. Time alone isn't loneliness. It's armor. When you have no solitude, when you are never genuinely alone with your own thoughts, you have no standard of comparison. You drift with whoever is around you. Your sense of what's acceptable, what's right, what matters, is perpetually negotiated by the most recent social input. Solitude is the place where your own standard reasserts itself. Where you can hear what you actually think, as opposed to what the last 3 conversations shaped you to think. He wrote, the greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. This contentment isn't passive. It requires maintenance. It requires time away from the noise of other people's dissatisfactions, other people's comparisons, other people's standards for what counts as enough. Seneca built regular solitude into his life at every stage, even during his years in the imperial court. Not as retreat from difficulty, but as the source of the clarity that made him useful in difficulty. Without it, he said, you can only become what the crowd makes you. Here's the question Seneca would ask you. Think of the 3 people you spend the most time with. After every interaction with them, do you feel sharper or duller? More like yourself or less? Not whether they're good people. Not whether you like them. Whether, after spending time with them, you're closer to the person you want to be. If the answer is no, you don't have to burn anything down. Just start giving that time to someone else. Quietly. Without explanation. Seneca did it. He was surrounded by the most dangerous people in the Roman Empire. He survived by choosing carefully and withdrawing intentionally. You can do the same thing in your own life. One conversation at a time. Letters from a Stoic. Letter 7 is where this starts. It's 3 pages long and free on Project Gutenberg. I've linked it below. The next video is about the practice that connects all of Stoicism, the Stoics' relationship with death, and why thinking about it daily might be the most counterintuitive cure for modern anxiety that exists. I'll see you there.